All right, now to the unprecedented controversy that surrounds JEA and the city of Jacksonville.
There are at least 5 separate investigations underway as chaos ensues with the impending exodus of the entire JEA board.
But as On Your Side Shelby Danielson explains tonight, this tension, it may sound very familiar to some since it's the second time under Mayor Curry's reign that board members have collectively handed in their resignations.
Fact gathering stage, I want to make sure that JEA is acting in the best interest of the taxpayer as good stewards. And so I'll have meetings with those board members and we'll go from there.
Just a couple months into Mayor Curry's first term, and he was asking for every JEA board member to submit their resignation as city attorneys investigated possible violations of sunshine laws. At that time, the mayor requested private meetings with each board member, which resulted in heated exchanges that turned the question of transparency back on the mayor's office. In this email exchange, the JEA vice chair at the time, Peter Bauer, asks if he can bring his attorney, or at least have the city's general counsel available, since he would be questioned by the mayor's administration. In fact, Bauer is accused of adding, quote, obstacles and unnecessary complications by asking for the meeting to be held in the open, and he was asked to immediately resign. In another heated exchange, the JEA board chair at the time, Lisa Strange Weatherby, also asks for the meeting to be held in the open, which she is denied. She writes, quote, the mayor has chosen to insist on government in the darkness. She submits her resignation weeks later. Since then, there's been more turnover, with a major shock in 2018 with the resignation of CEO Paul McElroy. Now with his replacement Aaron Zahn fired this week, under investigation, and the entire JEA board leaving, who will lead the public utility remains a question, with concern over transparency still at the center of it all. Shelby Danielson, First Coast News, On Your Side.
And tonight, Mayor Curry's office tells us he's already compiling a list of qualified potential board members for JEA, and he plans to work with City Council to make those appointments. But the question remains, will the people that he selects accept a position at such a time of uncertainty for the utility? We're told to expect more details next week, so we will keep you posted.